Hi there! A blessed and a pleasant day to each and everyone. I am Kate Lapuz, taking up Masters of Education, major in Physical Education in my alma mater, Pampanga State Agricultural University. Also, I am a junior high school teacher in one of the public schools here in Magalang, Pampanga. For today, I am very excited to present with you my final output in my thesis entitled Development and Validation of Self-Learning Module in Physical Education 9. Moving on with our introduction, as you can see, there is this word education. Solomon Ortiz said that education is the key to success and teachers make a lasting impact in the lives of their students. And that is true. Even here in the Philippines, we do have this Philippines, Republic of the Philippines Article 14 under Section 1 state that shall protect and promote the right of all citizens to quality education. But as we are now facing pandemic, okay, of course, our Department of Education, okay, didn't expect that our education lasts longer like this. But according to the UNESCO 2020, 100 countries implemented nationwide closure because of the pandemic. We are still blessed because here in the Philippines, of course, our Department of Education thought and made some possible ways on how not to stop our education. In addition, as a researcher, I also included the three topical discussions that we have in here. The physical education, its goal, wherein it was being discussed in the paper what is all about in physical education 9, how are the curriculum learning under the K to 12 curriculum, the learning competencies that were included in the paper. The second one, we have the existing modular distance learning because as all we know that we are now facing okay the modular distance learning, and the third one we have the self-learning module and its part. Next to our introduction, we have the motivation of the researcher. One of the studies in the paper of K. Jayasri in the year of 2004, she said that the other studies believe that the importance of self-learning module is one of the reasons why the students excel in their study. And I think that would be the very reason why the researcher pushed through this study. So moving on to the next part of the research paper, which is the research gap. As you can see, there were two highlighted topics. We have the printed SLMs or the self-learning modules, and the second one we have the availability of the SLMs. So let's start with the printed SLM. So as all we know, during the first month of the school year 2020 to 2021, parents and even students posted on social media about the SLMs that they have. Most of the posts are or were all about the errors and topics of self-learning module. In the report of Randa and the Philippine Star Global, San Antonio still welcomed the efforts of the netizens who called out for the errors. So that is one of the main point of this research. Second one, we have the availability of the self-learning modules. So there were no complete modules from the first quarter to fourth quarter when this school year started. And I think these two topic that we have in here are perfect for the research gap of this study. Also, we have in here the theoretical framework. So as you can see, we have in here two theories because these were actually the perfect description or describe, okay, our research paper. Starting with the theory of instruction by Robert Gain. So the theory of instruction determines the objectives of the instruction. Instructional material can be used to develop higher learning abilities to the learners through self-teaching or guided teaching. Moreover, students will actually develop their abilities in following guidelines and instructions by themselves. Another theory we have in here is the instruction design theory by Charles Regelet. The instructional design theory states that offer explicit guidance on how between help people learn and develop. So the kinds of learning and development may include cognitive, emotional, social, physical, and spiritual, the totality or the holistic development of an individual. Of course, we also have in here the conceptual framework. In this one, let us proceed with our three boxes. We have here the development, the validation, and the output. Let's talk about development. In the development, this is the process of the collected data in crafting the module and learning competencies in physical education 9 under K to 12 curriculum were actually included. And the second one, we have the validation. In the validation part, the researcher, okay, used the evaluation sheet DE and ODEL module made by the College of Education in Pampanga State Agricultural University. Actually, in our further discussion, you are going to know what are or what were the two instruments that the researcher used. And the last one, we have the output. This is the stage wherein the self-learning module was already validated, okay, for the physical education 9. So the paradigm of the study illustrates the conceptual framework that I had discussed earlier. So in this one, okay, we have in here the three stages wherein the first one, it talks about the content of the self-learning module in physical education for grade 9, okay, the design or format that the researcher was being was used, and of course the pedagogy wherein it is all about the crafting and the developing of the module. Second to that is the validation of the self-learning module using the evaluation rating sheet for DE and ODEL modules given by the College of Education in PSAU. And for the last one is the output of the researcher, which is the validated of the self-learning module in physical education 9. Moving on to this one, of course, this is one of the important parts of the research paper, which is the research problem. So, this study aims to develop and validate a self learning module for students in public schools for Magalang, Pampanga in Physical Education 9 for the school year 2020 to 2021. So, the study seeks to answer the following questions. The first one, how may the module in Physical 9 be developed? How may the module be validated in terms of content, design, or format and pedagogical? So, what was the research design of this paper? Of course, the study utilized a descriptive developmental research, which aims to describe a population, situation, or phenomenon accurately and systematically. Moving on to our respondents or evaluators. Of course, in here we have first set. of evaluators and second set of evaluators, since we have also later on two sets of instruments. So evaluators contributed a lot in this paper. Let's talk about the first set of evaluator. So the first set were the 9 subject teachers from Cluster 1 of the Division of Pampanga. They have been teaching grade 9 physical education for 2 years and above. Second to them were 2 head teachers, 2 master teachers, and 2 structural and development of self-learning module who were actually in the field of physical education. So next to our respondents is, of course, we have in here the instruments. So again and again, the instruments of the researcher were adopted in the College of Education in Pampanga State Agricultural University. So there were 2 sets of evaluation that the researcher used. The first one includes the name of the validator, the subject matter expertise. All of the topics included in the module must also be written in here because since this is a content validation, so all of the topics must be written in here. Checklist of essential and non-essential columns. By the way, this one was also under Loesch method, and there's this solution to get the content validity of each topic. So it would be CVR is equals to open parenthesis E minus N divided by 2 double close parenthesis divided by open parenthesis and divided by 2 close parenthesis, and then n is equals to number of experts and e is the number who rated the topics as essential. So next one, of course, we have in here the second instrument. These includes name of the validator, the position currently handling, highest educational attainment, and of course, the 4 factors in here. So, factor 1 includes content, factor 2 includes design or the format, factor 3 is our technological or technical. That was actually excluded in this paper because Factor 3 is more on technical module. The paper that we have right now is printed module. And for the last one, we have the factor 4 is the pedagogical of the module. Next would be our procedure. So in this one, the researcher were listed all of the actions that I actually made. Okay, so we have in here the 3 stages, okay, in crafting and doing the self-learning module. We have the first one, pre-development. So in this phase or in this stage, I sought permission to the 2 sets of evaluators. Also, I listed the topics that were connected in learning competencies of physical education 9 under the K to 12 curriculum by collecting data from the books, even in online resources, and etc. The second one, we have the development. In this stage, I actually used the format of the Department of Education. We have in here the Republic Act number 10618 entitled as Elements of the Body of Alternative Delivery Mode of Department of Education. Okay, in here. So we have, of course, first, we have the learning objectives. This is the first part of the self learning module. Second is the pretest. Third, would be the lesson proper. The fourth one would be the review or the pause test. And the last part is the additional activities. Well, additional activities if it's just applicable. And for the last stage in our procedure, we have the validation. In here, I considered all the data gathered in the first set of evaluators to accomplish the self-learning module in Physical Education 9. And that would be also the second set of our evaluators in answering the DE and ODEL evaluation. So next to our part would be the results and discussion. So as you can see, we have in here the first table entitled as the stages in developing the self-learning module in physical education for grade 9. So same as the procedure, I have given with you in here the pre-development, the development, and validation. So the difference between the two is that this is the shortest way on how I am going to discuss with you. Anyway, since I have already discuss with you what did I do during the pre-development, during the development, and during the validation. I just want to emphasize that the implementation of this self-learning module in physical education for grade 9 um, will not be will not be part of this study. Moving on to the next one, so this would be the table number one. Going on to our table number two. This is all about the content validity ratio of the number of respondents, including essential topics. So earlier, I have discussed with you the first instrument that my evaluators answered, and this is it. I already included in here the topics, okay, the number of respondents, the number or total number of respondents who answered essential, the content validity, and the descriptive rating. Okay, so we have five columns in here. Also, as you can see, from quarter one, we have six topics. In our quarter two, we have in here four topics. So the total number of respondents in our first instrument were nine teachers, and as you can see from quarter one to quarter two, they were all answered essential. All of the topics from quarter one to quarter two answered essential. And of course, the CVR or the content validity ratio of all of this topic from quarter one to quarter two were one, and the descriptive rating were retained. Moving on to the next one, quarter three to quarter four, as you can see, all of the data gathered were actually good. Like all of the nine teachers in the first validators were actually answered essential. And yeah, same with the CVR. Um, the answer was one, and also with the descriptive rating, all of the topics from quarter three to four were also retained. And we also have in here table 3.1. The table 3.1 is all about the evaluation rating sheet for DE and ODEL modules. So since we have the first set of instrument, this would be the second set of instrument that the researcher used. So as you can see, I have told you a while ago that factor one is all about content, and factor one is all about 1.1, or yeah, it consists of 1.1 to 1.5. Okay, so in here all of the respondents or evaluators are six. Okay, so the data gathered that the researcher have were six yes, and the descriptive rating in here is of course agreed. So therefore, all of the evaluators agreed that the content of the self-learning module were evident. Moving on to the next one, we have the factor 2. In here, it is all about the design and format of the self-learning module. So same with the factor 1, all of the respondents answered perfect six, okay, from factor 2.1 to factor 2.5. And as you can see, factor 2.3 was not included in this table because factor 2.3 is all about the animation. Since we are printed module in this paper, so 2.3 was not actually included. So the descriptive rating of the factor 2 in this table 3.2 was actually agreed. Okay, all of them were actually agreed. And of course, we also have in here the last factor that the researcher used, which is the factor for pedagogical. 4.1 to 4.7. So as you can see, all of them, all of the evaluators again and again answered yes in factor 4, and the descriptive um, rating of this one were all agreed. So yeah, table 3.3, I mean table 3.1 to table 3.3, all of the respondents or evaluators, who were total in number of six, answered yes. So now let us move on with our conclusion. So based on the data gathered in the study, the following conclusions were drawn. Okay, so as you can see in here, we have the first one, the instructional material in physical education for grade 9. So I have made the enhance, okay, students, this can be a conclusion since we gathered the data, and as you can see, all of the gathered data were all good. So this can enhance students' knowledge and skills based on the data gathered in content validity and pedagogical. Second is the essential topics included in the module. So since even in the first instrument, all of the evaluators answered essentials written, okay, in the table that we have earlier, students can actually use this module, okay, but as a teacher there is still perfect or good strategy when it comes in discussion. So if this will use in the near future, of course, the module where the students' needs in the whole quarter of PE 9 were already evident, from the theory down to the different activities given in the module. So all of the activities were actually essentials. Number three, the two sets of instruments in validating the self-learning module in physical education for grade 9. So since the self-learning module had its good results and interpretation, that means, okay, it can be used in the teaching and learning process. Going on to our recommendation. So in our recommendation, we have in here four numbers. So the first one, we have the output. So what is all about in this one? So the researcher gave the first thing, which is output. It is because the student and teachers can use the self learning module in their lesson in physical education 9, since all of the topics were actually essentials. That's my point earlier. And then number two, evaluators help. So even if the self-learning module got good results in content design or format, pedagogical, it is still up to the learner's needs if that will be the strategy that they will use. So this is more on teacher strategy. Even if you are going to use the self-learning module in the near future, of course, it is still up to the learner needs. What are you going to use? And then number three, future researcher. So future researchers can develop more self-learning modules to help students improve the low learning competencies in the curriculum, or the low targeted learning competencies that we have in the K to 12 curriculum. And for the last one, I actually wrote there pandemic. It is because in today's situation, it is never easy to think of a good study, right? But there is something great to realize that pandemic is never a hindrance in making output for education. And I am actually proud because I have given a chance to make this kind of research. And of course, before I am going to end my presentation, without these group of persons, of course, this would not be possible. So I just want to give thanks to my panelists, starting with my advisor, Professor Sharon Baltazar, to the chair of this group, Dr. John R. T. Martin. For the two members, we have Professor Aljan G. Sampson, of course, Professor Sheila V. Morales, to our external member, Mr. Ernest Joseph Supan, to my statistician, Professor Johnny C. Doctor, to my English critic, Professor Aika Carla Briones, to our graduate school coordinator, who is Professor Leslie V. Torres, and to our beloved Dean of College of Education, Dr. Glenn M. Calaguas. Thank you so much for this kind of opportunity in this journey. I am so grateful, okay, to present with you this one. So again, I am Kate Canlis Lapus, taking up Master of Education major in Physical Education, having this title, Development and Validation of a Self-Learning Module in Physical Education 9. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope you've learned a lot from this presentation. Thank you so much. God bless us all.